Glad you could be with us this morning for Pat's Papers. I'm Pat Kiernan. We do this every day, going through the nation's newspapers to bring you the highlights. We'll start today with an interesting story on the front page of USA Today. It's a story about travel over the holidays that caught my eye. First, the front page travel snapshot in USA Today. It's about the things that you might do that most annoy your fellow travelers when you're flying. When surveyed, 59% of travelers said people who let their kids run around are at the top of their annoyance list. Next was those who recline their seats too far during mealtime. For others, the annoyances before they get on the plane, 37% said they hate getting stuck in the security line at the airport behind someone who doesn't know the routine. Also on the front page of USA Today, a story about the flood risk to communities across the U.S. The Army Corps of Engineers reviewed the condition of levees across the country after the problems with Hurricane Katrina. Of 122 levees identified as unreliable, fewer than half have been repaired. The story notes the majority of the deficient levees are in Washington State and California. On to the New York Times, where a front-page story describes scavenging for food in Zimbabwe. The story includes the story of a family that manages to bake just one loaf of bread and then has to share 11 slices for 6 people. A United Nations survey found 7 in 10 people had either eaten nothing or only a single meal on a typical day. The Times describes the hunger crisis as largely man-made. U.S. economic news, also on the front page of the Times. The headline is "More Firms Cut Labor Costs Without Layoffs." The story says more people are being shifted to a 4-day work week. Others are either allowing or asking employees to take unpaid vacations. The idea, says Times writer Matt Richtel, is to cut labor costs but hang on to the labor. Winter weather is a story across much of the country. On the front page of the Daily Gazette in Schenectady, New York, a story that says there's been about 20 inches of snow since Friday. From Fort Wayne, Indiana, in the Journal-Gazette, a story about the linemen who bring power back after an ice storm. On Sunday night, 56,000 homes in the Fort Wayne area were without power. Olympia, Washington, the headline in the Olympian is "And It Keeps On Coming." 20 inches of snow may be familiar in some parts of the country. It's a surprise in the South Sound area. The story quotes meteorologist Jay Albrecht, who says it is unusual but not unprecedented to get that kind of snowfall there. The headlines in Colorado are again focused on the plane crash on Saturday in Denver. A Continental Airlines 737 headed for Houston. It slid off the end of a runway, or the side of a runway. 38 people were hurt. Today's Rocky Mountain News says federal investigators are starting their review today. Dick Cheney says he believes that history will vindicate the policies of the Bush era. The Miami Herald recaps Cheney's weekend interview with Fox News. As he looks back on the 8 years he's worked for George W. Bush, he says the White House has been justified in expanding the range of presidential authority since 2001. Washington officials are updating their predictions now about the kind of crowd they expect will move into downtown Washington for Barack Obama's inauguration. The best predictions now are that 2 or 3 million people will head to downtown Washington for the event. Only 400,000 attended George Bush's swearing-in 2004. The Post tries to put the economic stimulus bill into perspective. Congress expected to start debate next month on the proposal for $850 billion in projects to keep the economy moving. The Post says that amount would dwarf every major government expenditure in the last century, except for World War II. The Senate for Sale scandal in Illinois may be getting many of the headlines, but there's a nice feature in LA this morning from the Times about the tough decision facing 3 other state governors as they all look for senators to replace Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Ken Salazar. Not since 9 senators died in office during President Eisenhower's first term have there been so many Senate vacancies at one time. The Philadelphia Inquirer, one of the papers picking up on a report that found a colon prevents 60 to 70% of colon cancer deaths. That is not quite the 90% effectiveness rate that was previously assumed. One doctor said he's dismayed by some of the headlines. People are now saying this invasive procedure isn't worth it. He says a colonoscopy really isn't bad compared to getting cancer. The VHS video era is over. The LA Times reporting on a Florida distributor who has shipped the last inventory of VHS movies out to discount stores across the U.S. The last major Hollywood movie to be released on VHS was in 2006. It was A History of Violence. But for the last couple of years, Distribution Video Audio has been trading in old inventory of VHS movies. The Times says many of those tapes are still out there on store shelves, but once they're gone, the only replacements will come in the form of DVD. And Hawaii still abuzz with President-elect Barack Obama's family vacation there. He worked out at the fitness center of a Marine Corps base in Honolulu on Sunday. For his round of golf, he enjoyed temperatures 80 degrees warmer than those back home in Chicago. And that's our look at what's in the nation's newspapers this morning. I'm Pat Kiernan. Thanks for joining us. Go to patspapers.com, where you will find the complete list of all of the stories we featured today, along with links to the individual newspaper websites.